K-pop Demon Hunters is the most Christian thing that a lot of people are going to watch this year, so why is this movie getting so much hate from the Christian community online? This is In Philosopher's Garb. I'm a Christian scholar specializing in theology, and then in this video, I want to do a deep dive into this recent worldwide cultural phenomenon from a Christian perspective. Ultimately, my goal in this video is that my Christian viewers would watch this movie and for them to feel the beauty in the movie that I felt. I also hope to illustrate how this movie presents a massive opportunity for cultural apologetics. To achieve this goal, I will give a brief synopsis of the plot, talk about what I think are some of the really powerful Christian themes throughout the movie, dissect some of the major scenes and song lyrics, and I'll address the major critiques that other Christians have been raising against this movie. So let's get started with some general remarks on the movie. This movie is immensely fun, seriously, from the catchy songs, pretty much all of which are bangers, to the cute animations, to fast-paced plot and uplifting message. This movie is an absolute treat. The general plot of the movie is that there is a dark world of demons who want to attack humans and consume their souls. These demons are led by Guima, who is kind of the Satan figure. These evil forces are kept at bay by a group of demon hunters who fight the demons through two means. The first and most significant means through which they fight the demons is by singing. The songs they sing create a kind of barrier that the demons can't cross through. This barrier is called the Hanmun, but sometimes demons get through, and of course that's what cool swords and knives are for. Through their songs, the Hanmun is strengthened, which prevents the demons from having their way with humans. In order to break the Hanmun, the Satan figure gets some demons to create a kind of competitor boy band who draw the fans away from the hunters, and this corrupts the Hanmun and allows the demons to feast on people's souls. The general plot of the movie is the demon hunters, Huntrix, trying to figure out how to fight the demon boy band, the Saja Boys. The overarching plot of the movie is spiritual warfare. The idea is that there is this ongoing battle that most of the world is not even aware of for the soul of each individual and of the world. This is Satan and the cosmic baddies. This is, of course, a familiar concept in Christianity, but the connections go deeper than that. And it's at this point I need to give a spoiler warning. I'm not going to be able to make the points I want to make without revealing some plot points. I'll try, when possible, to not give more than is needed to make my point, but if you're someone who doesn't want any plot revealed, I highly encourage you to just stop now, go watch the movie first, and then come back and let me help you process it. Okay, let's hop into it. A reoccurring theme throughout the movie is that the Satan figure whispers into people's ears or minds, causing them shame and using that shame and hurt to control them. The demon boy band, the Saja Boys, is led by a demon named Jinu. Jinu was actually a human, but through his greed, he made a deal with the devil that ended up hurting his family. The shame of that sin haunts him, and Jinu is kept in bondage to Guima because of it. Jinu is tormented by the sins of his past, and he feels hopeless in escaping the clutches of Guima. This is why he initially signs up to fight the hunters. But throughout the movie, the lead singer of the demon hunters, Roomie, tries to get Jinu to convert. She tells him that he doesn't have to be in bondage to Guima. She tells him that if he joins with the hunters, when the battle is all said and done, he can be free. Guima will have no more power over him, and through his interactions with Roomie, Jinu does get to experience a bit of the salvation he's longing for. It is through singing with her that the voices in his head are silenced, and he begins to hope again. And this entire plot line with Jinu is deeply Christian, but so many Christian content creators have critiqued it because they just don't understand what is going on in the movie. There's a point where I have to start wondering if these people just started up this movie looking for something to find to object to and just ignore the rest of the plot. I've heard Christian YouTubers say, oh, well, Jinu is a demon and he's depicted as having some good in him, but demons are not supposed to have any good, something, something lies of Satan, you get the point. And people who say this show that they're not paying attention to the movie. They have a conception of what a demon is in a Christian context. And so when they hear the word demon, they try to draw a line between how that word is depicted in the movie and how that word is used in their theology. And then they throw a tantrum when the concepts don't line up. But this is silly and it fails to engage with the movie on its own terms and with its own language. Jinu is not a demon. He is a human who becomes a demon because of his sins and his ensnarement to Guima. There's a difference here. This is a deeply Christian idea. The idea that humans started out good, but because of sin we fell into captivity to Satan, which now controls us and transforms us, is a Christian concept. C.S. Lewis talks in his work about how each one of us is being transformed into something. He says in The Weight of Glory, it is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. The idea here is that just as we as Christians become sanctified through the Holy Spirit over time and thus become more and more like God, so too the lost collapse more and more into their sins and become more and more like demons. Both heaven and hell, in some degree, can be experienced already on this earth. What we see in the character of Jinu is this exact concept. If you want to draw a line between Jinu and some concept in Christianity, he should be viewed as the prototypical sinner who through their sin has been held captive by Satan, a captivity which has corrupted his very being and started to turn him into a hellish creature. You, the listener, guess what? You are Jinu. I am Jinu. All of the lost that Jesus came to save are Jinu. Remember what Christ says. He says he comes to give liberty to the oppressed, to free the captive. We get the idea in Hebrews that Jesus comes to destroy the one who holds the power of sin and death, that is, the devil. But just as we, as Christians, can be freed from the powers of sin and death by turning our allegiance from Satan and towards God, Jinu too can finally be free of his bonds by turning his allegiance away from Guima and to the light. The anguish that Jinu feels at his past sins and the effect that has on him can be resolved by positioning himself on the right side of the battle. And that is a Christian message. The Christian message is, yes, you've sinned and you've been held captive to that sin, and that shame has eaten you up, and you've been subject to the powers of sin and death, but you don't have to be. Align with Christ, renounce the devil, and you will experience victory. And this leads to the next point of absurdity with complaints about this movie, which is that, oh, it humanizes demons. No, stop. As a Christian, the takeaway from this is not to humanize demons as we understand that term in our Christian theological context. Rather, the takeaway is to humanize the lost. The takeaway is to not write off and hate our fellow humans who are still suffering under the bondage of sin. It's easy as Christians to demonize everyone who has different views from us, to see people from other religions as the enemy and hate them. But we need to remember that they've been deceived. They are captive. They aren't hopeless. C.S. Lewis depicts the gospel message as a God who says to a force of mutineers that they must lay down their arms. Despite the fact that Jinu was on the other side, he was, to use Christian speak, still made in the image of God. There were still sparks of good in him. And that is how we should see our fellow humans who have not yet come to the light of Christ. And what was great is that as Roomie got to know Jinu, she started to realize that the song they were going to use to defeat him, it wasn't going to work. The hunters were preparing a takedown song that was insulting and mean and hateful, and Roomie started to realize that no, that tactic's not going to work, and it wasn't right. And I thought that was so great because as Christians, many people fall into hatred for those who they perceive as outside their camp, whatever their camp may be. But as Christ teaches us, we are to love our enemies. And throughout all of this, there was never any hint that Jinu and Roomie were on equal moral footing. Like, it was clear that Jinu was in the wrong. This wasn't relativizing anything. It was humanizing them. It was not humanizing demons as Christians talk about demons. It was humanizing the people, the humans, who have fell into bondage to Satan or to Guima, and who are themselves turning into hellish creatures. And we need to talk about Roomie, because a major plot point of the movie is that she's part demon. But let's be clear of what that actually means. Roomie's father was a demon, and because of that, there was an aspect of her that was tainted. She fought the darkness, but she could still look in the mirror and see the demon scars that were on her body. But she longed for the day where Guima would be finally defeated, and her demon scars would finally be removed for good. And here's a newsflash, everybody. That is also a deeply Christian concept. Seriously, most Christians on this earth believe that there was something that happened before we were born, and because of that, we are subject to the flesh. Some might say that we have a sinful nature, some might not like that articulation, but that is not the point right now. Regardless of the theological model you use to cash it out, pretty much every Christian thinks that there is some part of us that is at war with the good that is in us. We are all wrestling with the flesh in this life, and we all yearn for the day where the flesh will be replaced by immortality. Just as we should all see Jinu as the prototypical sinner and see the lost in him, we should all see Roomie as the prototypical Christian who yearns to do good and who is doing good, but who is still haunted by the part of her that is evil and has not yet been redeemed. Moving on, I want to talk about the final showdown in the film. Something that's interesting about the Saja boys throughout the movie is how they start off as attractive and alluring. They're kind and innocent, but then as the plot develops, the more sinister side starts to develop. The final song that the Demon Boy Band sings is honestly a work of art on multiple different levels, and I want to take some time to dissect this. The first time we see the Saja boys in the film, they're in hell, and we see them as they are, and they're kind of demon form. But when they come to Earth, that's not how they present themselves. They present themselves as cute, funny, and attractive enough to turn your eyes into popcorn. Their songs are depicted as turning the world into bright colors. But at their final performance, the one where Guima is finally going to win and everybody's soul is going to be consumed, their true form is presented. At this point, the people are so ensnared that the demons don't even try to hide who they are. Even if you know nothing about Korean culture, when you see their appearance, you get this sense of something sinister and ominous. Many have pointed out that the way these figures are dressed, it resembles a type of figure in Korean folklore who is kind of like their version of the Grim Reaper, but we're not going to get too much into that. In this one performance, the Saja boys go from happy, upbeat, harmless songs in a world of color to being clearly evil in appearance, movement, location, and message. Let's talk about the location. They were essentially performing at the gates of hell as the people are about to be led in and consumed. And the visuals of all this is matched by the lyrics of their final song. In their final song, the Saja boys sing, and they have lyrics like this: pray for me now, I'll be your idol. And then as the song goes on, you get lyrics like, your obsession feeds our connection. Give me all your attention. You know that I'm the only one who will love your sins. You see, the idea is that they are drawing the masses to them, feeding on their pain, affirming their obsessions, and claiming to be their idol. And this is what the demon hunters are fighting against. This song is such a good representation of the biblical Satan figure who wants to be worshipped in the place of God and who lures people to him through false promises and vices that all ultimately lead to destruction, who encourages us to give in to our passions. Now, I want to read to you a short section of the final song that Huntrix, the Demon Hunters, play in response and dissect it a bit because it is so beautiful in context. Remember that the overarching theme of this movie is how Guima uses our faults and our insecurities to manipulate us and to draw us away from the light. A common theme is how those who were oppressed by Guima had his constant voice in their head telling them these lies and rubbing their face in their shame, and that was the means through which he controlled them and ensnared them. And those of you who have read my book on atonement will know that this is how Satan is kind of depicted in the Bible. He's depicted as the great deceiver who stood before God day and night, and he accuses us and he uses our sin to bring condemnation and keep us in captivity and things like that. And the message of the gospel is that because of Jesus, we now have a defendant in heaven who defeats these accusations and who purifies our conscience. And that constant voice in our head can be defeated because of the blood of Jesus that purifies our conscience. Now, at this point in the movie, one of the major plot points has been that there were secrets and shame and conflict in the Demon Hunters group, which led them to fighting and, spoiler alert, the band breaking up. With that in mind, this is the chorus of the final song sung by Roomie as she walks out on stage by herself to confront Guima. Roomie sings, I broke into a million pieces, and I can't go back. But now I'm seeing all the beauty in the broken glass. The scars are part of me, darkness and harmony. My voice without the lies, this is what it sounds like. Why did I cover up the colors stuck inside my head? I should have let the jagged edges meet the light instead. Show me what's underneath, I'll find your harmony. The song we couldn't write, this is what it sounds like. What's interesting about this chorus is that it gets repeated, but with slight changes throughout the song. It starts off in the first person singular, with Rumi singing, saying I, but then as the other hunters and the crowd joins in, it shifts to the first person plural, using we instead of I. This is beautiful in context and can be appreciated through a Christian lens, so let's look at each of these verses in turn. We broke into a million pieces and we can't go back. This references not just the conflict that broke the demon hunters apart, but I think also more generally the wrong things that we have done in our life and the wrong that Jinu had done in his past. There are some sins that break things, and they break it in ways that we can never go back to exactly how it was. And the Satan figure was using that brokenness to tell them that they were hopeless, but that is where the next verse comes in. But now we're seeing all the beauty in the broken glass. The idea here is that despite the brokenness, things are not hopeless. It isn't saying the sins were good. It isn't glorifying the problems. It's saying that there is redemption and beauty that can come out of even the brokenness. And I think this is a deeply Christian concept. The Apostle Paul killed Christians. He persecuted the church. Of sinners, he said he was the foremost. And all of that broken glass became beautiful because of how Christ transformed him. Paul boasts in his weakness because it portrays the beauty and power of Christ. I have friends that were drug addicts before they came to Christ, and all of that brokenness of the past, that is now part of their story of what Christ saved them out of. And that complete story is now beautiful despite the broken glass. This gets carried into the next verse. The scars are part of me, darkness and harmony. The singer of this verse throughout the movie felt shame that she had the scars which mark her as a demon. She was one of the demon hunters who has spent her life fighting darkness, but through no fault of her own, she was born with these scars. She has had this kind of genetic aspects of being a demon. And her shame about these scars is what led a bunch of the conflict. But now she's recognizing she doesn't need to bear that shame. That doesn't mean she approves of Guima and that she likes his goals. She still fights against him. She does not approve of the darkness. And I think this is quite fine and in accord with the Christian doctrine that as we are right now, we are still at war with the flesh, and flesh is still a part of us. We still wrestle with it. This takes us into the next verse. My voice without the lies. This is what it sounds like. This is her moment of finally finding freedom from the condemnation that had haunted her. This is her tasting that freedom and saying, oh, this is what it is like. Then in the next verse, she looks back at the shame she had been feeling and she says, why did we cover up the colors stuck inside our head? Get up and let the jagged edges meet the light instead. And this is the rallying cry of Christianity. Those voices, that shame you feel, don't cover it, uncover it to God. Confess, admit your faults, get up and let the jagged edges of your brokenness meet the light instead. Because it is through meeting that light of Christ that you are freed. Then we have the final verses of this course. Show me what's underneath. I'll find your harmony. Fearless, undefined. This is what it sounds like. These words, I think, could very well be spoken by Jesus himself. Jesus can look at whoever is broken and say to them, show me your faults, show me your brokenness, and I will find your harmony and my kingdom. Now, while Roomie is singing this, something interesting is happening with her visually. Remember how we talked about how Roomie is part demon? The demon scars on her were previously red, which is the colors associated with the demons in the movie. But as she progresses through this song, something interesting happens. The scars turn blue, which is the color of the Hanmoon. She still has the scars she was born with. She still has that side. But because she brought the jagged edges to the light, even those scars are now redeemed. They are transformed into something that she isn't ashamed of. We see in Rumi the transformation that we're all hoping for. And it is through this messaging, through this song, that the hordes of people who are following Guima start to wake up and they join in the song and they help in defeating Guima. And that is an immensely Christian concept. I have this video on my YouTube where I talk about how the worship and the actions of the church drown out and refute and defeat the slander and lies of the devil and the role that it plays in the cosmic battle. And I want to talk about this idea for a bit because I've seen some naive Christians object to this movie by saying things like, oh, well, the people are saved because they turn and worship this other K-pop group, and they are just humans too, and it's because they worship this other human group that they're saved. And this is so silly, and it shows that people are not paying attention to the movie. Huntrix does not save the people through their own power. They are not drawing people to worshiping themselves. That is not the theme of the movie. Rather, Huntrix are, through their songs, inspiring and encouraging others to align themselves with the light. Huntrix is kind of like cosmic worship leaders throughout the movie. The idea is that they let the light shine through their music, and that light touches other people, and their hearts get aligned with the light. The opening of the movie explicitly says, our music ignites the soul and brings people together. With this connection, the first hunters created a shield. This is beautifully depicted in the last performance that we've been dissecting. I want to draw your attention to several things about how this gets represented visually in the movie and how it connects with Christian concepts. After I watched this movie, I kept listening to this song and I was very emotionally moved by it, and it hit me that I've been in enough churches to recognize a worship song when I hear one. And this song sounds like a worship song. Let me read you some lyrics from a well-known Christian worship song. Some lyrics go, we were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by his grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. Now listen to the lyrics from this song that we've been dissecting in K-Pop Demon Hunters. We listen to the demons. We let them get between us. But none of us are out here on our own. So we were cowards. So we were liars. So we're not heroes. We're still survivors. The dreamers, the fighters. No lying. I'm tired. But dive in the fire and I'll be right here by your side. We broke into a million pieces and we can't go back. But now we're seeing all the beauty in the broken glass. The scars are part of me. Darkness and harmony. My voice without the lies. This is what it sounds like. Y'all, this is a liberation song, and as they are singing these verses in the movie, look at what happens visually. The masses of people that were hypnotized and ensnared, their hearts start to get turned towards the light. Huntrix are igniting their souls and forming those connections, and is causing those who were enslaved to sin to turn towards the light and be transformed as well. And this is deeply Christian. I want to read to you a quote by an Orthodox scholar. This is from an academic theology paper, all right? Okay? Listen to this. God's saints who have the experience of seeing the uncreated light become a source of illumination for others. They are the ones to whom he says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." In the Philokalia, the likeness of God is not just an eschatological promise that will be fulfilled in an eschatological future. It is an eschatological reality fulfilled in God's saints, and this becomes evident to those who encounter them. Here's another quote. This is from an 11th century Byzantine monk, okay, who writes, "Those who, as a result of their purity and their knowledge of things divine, participate in this dignity are assimilated to God, conformed to the image of his Son, through their exalted and spiritual concentration upon the divine. Thus they become as gods to other men on earth. These others, in their turn, perfected in virtue by purification through their divine intelligence and through sacred intercourse with God, participate according to their proficiency and the degree of their purification in the same deification as their brethren, and they commune with them in the God of unity." So this final showdown incorporates these Christian elements so incredibly well. And there's a lot more I could talk about. This movie is an absolute masterclass on numerous levels. But what I want to focus on is a takeaway for Christians. This movie is striking a chord with people. This movie is hitting something in people without even knowing it. Maybe without even it being intended, this movie is allowing people to see and feel the beauty and the power of Christian truths without them even realizing it. And that has monumental potential for spreading the gospel. I have seen Christians complain about how, well, in this movie, salvation doesn't come from an explicit affirmation of Jesus as Lord and Savior XYZ. Yeah, no duh, it's a secular film. Some of these people are just almost insufferable with this nonsense. The fact that Jesus isn't explicitly mentioned as the Savior could actually potentially be a really positive thing in this movie's ability to be utilized for Christian purposes. If this movie had been the Bible thumping, Jesus preaching message that so many Christian content creators want it to be, it might not have gotten the widespread acclaim that it's got. I mean, it could have been, but a lot of people might have been put off of it regardless of the truth value. C.S. Lewis has a famous line that sometimes fairy tales can allow ideas to sneak past the watchful dragons of our mind. Because the ideas in K-pop Demon Hunter were not explicitly connected with Christianity, these ideas might be able to slip past the watchful dragons that might otherwise reject anything even remotely Christian or Jesus related. It allows ideas and concepts central to Christianity to be heard before people realize that they're even hearing Christian concepts. It allows central aspects of the Christian story to be seen as beautiful and their power to be felt without somebody already having a guard up about somebody preaching to them. You, as a Christian, can watch this and enjoy the beauty and fun in it, and you can use the beauty and power as a bridge to talk about Christianity. You can ask your friends if they've seen the movie, and then y'all can chat about it. And you can say, you know, as a Christian, I really liked how this part connected with a certain part of my faith. This is similar to how we view the devil or fallen humanity or whatever. And there you go, just like that, a topic most people are uncomfortable bringing up, it's now normal and you can talk about it in a meaningful way. You could watch this as a youth group and use it to create dialogue about how one can find similarities between pagan concepts and Christianity and use those similarities to build bridges, just like Paul did. You can also point out the areas where the movie gets it wrong and you can use that as a learning tool too. That's fine. This movie isn't supposed to be taken as a theology lesson. That's not the point of the movie. People have also complained that this movie draws on pagan themes and ideas from Korean folklore. First off, yeah, it's not surprising that a K-pop movie would draw on traditional Korean culture. Who would have thought? But second, and more importantly, so what? Guess what, everybody? The biblical authors did this same type of thing. It is widely recognized among scholars that the author of Daniel 7 drew on pagan Canaanite imagery of Baal and El in his depiction of the Son of Man and the Ancient of Days in Daniel. When Paul was in Greece, he looked at all the paganism there. He saw the shrine to the unknown God, and he said, "Yep, I'm going to use that to make my point." Paul quoted from secular and pagan poets in his work. C.S. Lewis took a story from Greek mythology and he Christianized it in his famous book, Till We Have Faces. Christians can take concepts from non Christian religions and use those concepts to articulate the gospel. And this is something that has a long standing history in the field of missionary studies. There was an entire concept in missiology called fulfillment theology, which is the idea that Jesus didn't just fulfill the hopes and dreams and aspirations of the Jewish religion, but he also fulfilled the central elements or hopes of pagan religions as well. And the idea here isn't some type of pluralism or watering down of the gospel. It's going to a culture, learning it, understanding it, and then using those concepts in the culture that already exist to explain and present the gospel. And in doing so, we don't demand that a people give up their culture. We can look at things in pagan cultures and say to them, you guys got a lot of things right here, but there are some things you have missed because you've seen through a glass darkly. Let me fill in the gaps. Here is how Jesus fulfills what you already believe to a higher level. And if any of the people screaming about pagan concepts in this film had actually studied anything in missiology, they would know that going into a culture and trying to tear it down and demand that it be replaced with something new isn't the best and most effective strategy. The goal of the missionary is not to replace one culture with another. You can appreciate a culture and the good that it has to offer, and then let that culture, from the inside out, be transformed by the Holy Spirit. And that resulting culture that has been baptized by the gospel will be an authentic expression of God's kingdom to that culture. I want to give you an example of this. Timothy Tennant is a well-known missiologist that is a Christian scholar who specializes in studying missionary work and things like that. And a while back, he wrote this fantastic book, Theology in the Context of Global Christianity, which has to do largely with a lot of what I've been talking about. And in one of the chapters, he talks about how Hindu concepts and culture are still being utilized in Indian Christianity today. I want to read you a brief quote from that book. It is not uncommon to hear Indian Christian theologians referring to the Upanishads as their Old Testament. Such a statement must seem odd to an outsider, but the idea is that just as the Old Testament served to prepare the way and point people to Christ in the early Jewish context, so the Upanishads serve as a kind of preparation for the gospel in the Indian context. Some Indian theologians, reading the account of Jesus on the road to Emmaus, which states that he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself, have applied the passage to Jesus' presence in India today. In their view, Jesus walks alongside Indian Christians and explains to them how the Indian scriptures point to and bear witness to him. Some Indian Christians even include readings from the Vedas or the Upanishads in Christian worship services. A.J. Apasami, a well-known Indian bishop of the Church of South India and considered one of the fathers of Indian Christian theology, published a book entitled Temple Bells, which was a collection of readings taken from a wide variety of Hindu sacred texts. The book was designed to be used devotionally and liturgically by Indian Christians. In his preface, Apasami sets forth several reasons why Indian Christians should become acquainted with the sacred texts of Hinduism. Although published in 1930, the reasons he gives remain essentially unchanged today. First, he reminds the reader that Jesus came to fulfill, not to destroy. Apasami was writing in the 19th century heyday of fulfillment theology, so this theme struck a concordant note in his readers. He urged Christians to take special note of the impulses, instincts, questions, longings, and aspirations reflected in these texts. Only by looking intently at the Hindu questions can we truly grasp how Jesus comes to India as the answer to and the fulfillment of the deepest longings of the Hindu heart. I know I've been harping on this point for a while and I'm going to bring this to a close. I just really want to emphasize how ignorant these pagan types of objections to K-pop Demon Hunters are. These internet Christians have a narrow, shallow, westernized view of Christianity that is often completely divorced from its historical roots. They often don't understand how it is that Christianity has been able to do so well in gaining footing in previously pagan areas, and they don't understand the conversations that are being had by people who specialize in these types of foreign missions. And because their zeal surpasses passes their knowledge, they are sitting on the internet and bashing what I think could very well be one of the most powerful pieces of cultural apologetics of our time. This movie has a huge potential despite not being a Christian film in the sense that that's not its goal. It isn't intended to be a theology lesson, and it's silly to bash it as if it is and to ignore the huge potential that it has to still like present the gospel to people. Before I close this video, I'm going to shamelessly plug a book that I just wrote. I just recently published a book arguing for the deity of Christ from a biblical perspective, and the ebook of this book is 100% free on Amazon. It won't cost you a thing. I address tons of objections to Christ's deity in this book. I draw on a variety of scholars, and I do so while keeping it easy for non-scholars to understand. So if you're ever engaged in apologetic encounters, you might want to check this out. Again, it's free, link in the description. Let me know if you like this video and want to see more stuff like this. This has probably been one of the more enjoyable scripts for me to write in a while. Anyways, everybody have a good day and feel free to roast me in the comments.